And of course, the most significant idea or the most significant implication of this idea of total control in the society can be seen within Germany, and of course all the territory that they happen to conquer within Europe. The creation of the Holocaust, the concentration camps. The first initial camps were actually created as prison camps. And so anyone who happened to object to the Nazis or to the party, regardless of their specific ethnicity, they would be sent off to these camps. And as Germany begins taking over more territory in Europe, is the idea that they cannot simply put ethnic minorities, despised minorities such as the Jews, the Romans, etc., in small camps, or they really can't, there's no way they can really concentrate them in these cities, or they can't send them off anywhere. They very much tried a variety of other types of removal. There was forced immigration, in which Jews fled to the Netherlands or to Denmark, these other locations. There was also encouragement to send them abroad, but there were certain limitations to this because they also limited exactly what Jewish individuals could take abroad with them. They could only take about $10 worth of gold, that amount of currency abroad with them, so they couldn't take very much wealth. And in terms of the Great Depression, where you have massive unemployment, a great deal of foreclosures, and also very small supplies of food, it gets to the point where immigration in Western nations is then going to be stopped. They don't want to take on a new population who can't really fend for themselves. And so that's how the concentration camps really came more into vogue into dealing with the final solution. There's no place they can send the Jews to that's going to get them out of the way. They don't want them all concentrated in one specific area, and so annihilation, genocide, is the only way they can deal with it. Totalitarianism is going to be used by Lenin, Stalin, Hitler, and of course Mussolini as well, but Mussolini really never garners exactly the total state control that these other three do. But they all differ in their economic policies and then in their specific goals. So you can have a totalitarian regime, and yet it doesn't necessarily mean that your regime is going to match up with another. For example, Hitler absolutely despised communism. He didn't have a great relationship with Stalin, and Stalin equally despised Hitler in Germany, and yet there are similar policies that they used, and then there are times when they definitely work together in order to achieve a common goal. Lenin stresses the total party unity, which is then going to be picked up by Stalin. And as I said this before, you cannot have communism in a society. A communist society does not allow for a dissenting minority. And this is something that Lenin and Stalin very much enforce. And this really actually ignores Marx for the implementation of communism, that the country has to be totally rebuilt. So you can even see at the very beginning that Russia was not suited for communism. Stalin and his first 5-year plans, these are exactly what's going to really keep the Soviet Union out of the Depression in terms of unemployment and low production. Stalin very much sees that World War I is not going to be an isolated event, that the reaction of the world, that countries that were very much annihilated or brutally embarrassed in World War I are going to rise again. And so Stalin believes that Russia must industrialize against all costs. But he's industrializing specifically in terms of um, war materials, guns, tanks, jeeps, everything like that. So consumer goods are very much essentially scrapped in terms of what Stalin is really hoping to achieve. Now, how the Depression is facing the rest of the world. Basically, what happens is after the stock market crashes, and the rest of the world is pulling out money out of banks. They're trying to do whatever is possible. You have a massive growth of inflation that's making money absolutely worthless. The international payments stop, investing stops, people panic, and they're drawing out money. Capitalist economic theory, in terms of how to try and get out of a recession or a depression, means that there should be no government intervention, that the economy is going to recover on its own if you just sort of let it wait. The problem is that you can't really let a government stand by and do this to the general population. Despite the fact these are all countries that value capitalism, they don't really value this idea of letting the market do what it wants to do when it's an issue between starvation, or if starvation is basically your only other option. But the intervention that governments tend to introduce is generally very not useful. Governments are looking to protect national interests, but because you're integrated into a global economy, you can't really protect national interests without harming everyone else. And so it produces a very uneasy population. No buying, no growth, and therefore no recovery. And so what this produces is enormous global poverty, deprivation similar to that of countries during the war. So we saw exactly what happened into communist countries and Lenin and Stalin's economic policies and five-year plans. On the other side of this, for the more capitalistic view, there is the new economic policies as produced in Western nations. Jean Maynard Keynes' theory does certainly adapt to capitalism, but it's definitely more of an interventionist approach. Keynes' theory encourages significant government intervention. The government needs to spend, even if they're going to run up a deficit, to encourage prosperity. The idea is once prosperity is then encouraged in the private sector and they can hold their own again, that's when the government is going to stop, they're going to raise taxes and pay back their debt. So this is actually a policy that's implemented by FDR within the New Deal. The problem is that this terms of spending and then stopping and then paying back, it's not something that the United States is terribly good at doing. We're very, very good at spending, and we're very good at borrowing from other sources of income, but we're not very good at paying back these loans, and this is what has gotten our debt into to this day. So Keynes' ideas are very much evident in FDR's New Deal. It's characteristic of a still stable political system, the fact that they are then able to create these new economic ideas, these fireside chats that encourage warmth and understanding. And so what he produces, the regulation of banks, the savings and loans, and then the government jobs to help encourage the private sector. This is really what's going to be helping the United States and some Western countries. But we saw how that wasn't going to necessarily be a factor in nations that were significantly harmed by the Great Depression. So that helps. So now we've sort of established how totalitarianism and socialism are interacting within Russia and exactly how they're faring. We've looked at how capitalism is going to take more of a government-controlled aspect in the United States and to try and work out economic devastation there. Now we have to take a look at a few other countries, those countries who were hit first by the Great Depression, exactly what's going to occur there.